In the village of Kadian in Yangshan County, there lived an old man who, along with his son, ran a roadside inn about 5 or 6 miles from the county town, catering to traveling merchants. Several cart drivers who frequently transported goods back and forth often rested at his inn. One evening, 4 cart drivers arrived together, but unfortunately, the inn was already full. With no other options, they pleaded with the innkeeper to find them a place to stay. The old man pondered and finally thought of a place, though he feared it might not be to the guests' liking. The guests quickly said, "We only need a place to shelter from the wind and rain. We dare not be picky." It turned out that the old man's daughter-in-law had just passed away, and her body was lying in the house, while his son had gone out to buy coffin materials and had not yet returned. The old man led the guests through the streets and alleys to the mourning hall. Upon entering the room, they saw a dim oil lamp on a wooden table, behind which was a funeral bed with curtains and a paper quilt covering the deceased. Looking into the bedroom, there was a large communal bed inside. The 4 travelers, exhausted from their journey, lay down and soon began snoring. Only one of them seemed to be half asleep when he suddenly heard a rustling sound from the funeral bed. He quickly opened his eyes, and the light from the lamp illuminated the surroundings clearly. He saw the female corpse sit up, lifting the paper quilt, and after a moment she got off the bed and slowly walked into the bedroom. The corpse had a pale yellow face, with a raw silk band tied around her forehead. She bent over the bed and blew air onto each of the 3 sleeping men. The man who was not asleep was terrified, fearing that the corpse would blow air on him, so he secretly pulled the quilt over his head and held his breath, listening for any movement. Not long after, the corpse indeed came over and blew air on him in the same manner. The guest felt the corpse leave the bedroom, and soon he heard the sound of the paper quilt again. He peeked out and saw the corpse lying stiffly as before. He was so frightened that he dared not make a sound, and he secretly tried to nudge his companions with his foot, but they did not move at all. He thought and thought, but could not come up with a solution, and decided it would be better to get dressed and escape. Just as he sat up to put on his clothes, the rustling sound came again. Terrified, he lay back down and pulled the quilt over his head. He felt the corpse come over again, blowing air on him several times before leaving. Not long after, the funeral bed made noise again, indicating that the corpse had returned to it. He slowly reached out from under the quilt, found his pants, and quickly put them on, then ran out barefoot. The corpse also sat up, as if to chase him. By the time she left the curtains, the guest had already opened the door and escaped. The corpse chased closely behind. The guest ran and shouted, but no one in the village woke up. He wanted to knock on the innkeeper's door, but fearing he would be caught if he slowed down, he ran desperately towards the county town. When he reached the eastern outskirts of the town, he saw a temple and heard the sound of a wooden fish. He hurriedly knocked on the door. The monks inside, seeing his strange behavior, refused to open the door. At that moment, the corpse arrived, only a foot away from him. The guest was even more frightened. Outside the temple gate was a white poplar tree with a trunk about 4 or 5 feet thick. He hid behind the tree, and when the corpse pounced to the right, he dodged to the left, and when the corpse pounced to the left, he dodged to the right. The corpse became increasingly angry, and both sides grew tired. The corpse stopped. The guest was drenched in sweat, hiding behind the tree. Suddenly, the corpse lunged forward, extending her arms to grab him from both sides of the tree trunk. The guest was so startled that he fell. The corpse could not grab him and gradually stiffened while holding the tree. The monks inside the temple had been listening for a long time and, hearing no more sounds, slowly came out. They found the guest lying on the ground, and upon shining a lamp on him, he appeared to be dead, but his chest was still slightly warm. The monks carried him into the temple, and after a night, the guest finally woke up. A Taoist priest gave him hot water to drink and asked him what had happened. The guest recounted the entire story. By then, the morning bell had rung, and the Taoist priest, taking advantage of the dawn light, examined.